Hi, I'm Annie. You can find my contact information in the description. I have some thoughts on David Baer. They recently did a class on him in the Objective Personality System, and he was typed as audio, TISE, consume, play, blast, sleep, the same type as Tom Bilyeu. And maybe you've already seen it, but there's an interview with Tom Bilyeu and David Baer that's really great, and you may have already watched it if you did the class and you used that as information to type. But it is a great interview, and it just gives you an idea of what David Baer has to offer. It's also really interesting to watch two people with the exact same type in a conversation with each other. So David Baer is doing this free Changed Mind challenge on Facebook this week, and there's like a series of live events every day. And I've been watching the lives. I dig the message. I think it's useful, practical information for growth mindset and achieving whatever goal it is you're trying to achieve. And the challenge is really about mindset and overcoming limiting beliefs. And what he's saying isn't new information, but he's just saying it in a way that I think would be palatable to certain people. I feel like the way he's using the TI language is potentially going to be able to reach people who would otherwise be maybe a little NF allergic. So he's basically talking about the law of attraction, but he's not using this really fluffy, airy-fairy NF language to do it. He's speaking ST. He's talking about it from a TI perspective. So that makes it something that potentially the TI mind can understand and accept. He's talking about it in a more practical, scientific way, similar to the way that it's framed in psychocybernetics. So if you've heard about the law of attraction and you just think it's bullshit because it's always framed in this kind of like NF hippy-dippy way that just isn't palatable to you, you might enjoy reading psychocybernetics. It's just a much more practical, logical approach to understanding the law of attraction. So you might think law of attraction is bullshit, but it's actually just the way the brain works. And if you want to learn more about this, you can Google the reticular activating system of the brain to learn how your brain seeks out data that validates your beliefs. So your brain shows you evidence of what you already believe. So if you change your belief, then your brain will show you all the data and evidence to support that. Basically, your brain can only pay attention to a small amount of the available data that's swirling all around us. And the reticular activating system prioritizes what you command it to prioritize. If you're really pessimistic and you believe that everything sucks, then your reticular activating system feeds you the supporting evidence that everything sucks. The world is shitty. It's a terrible place. And that's why the practice of gratitude journaling is so powerful, because you know that tomorrow morning you're going to open up your journal and you're going to have to come up with 10 more things that you're grateful for. And so your reticular activating system is all day long on the lookout for good things so that you have something to write down in the journal. It's basically just like a loyal dog. It fetches what you train it to fetch. If you tell your dog to fetch sticks, your dog's going to fetch sticks. If you tell your dog to retrieve the ducks that you shot, then the dog's going to retrieve the ducks. It retrieves what you tell it to retrieve. So train your brain to notice good things or train your brain to notice shitty things. So if you're on the lookout for good things, then you feel more comfortable, you feel more positive, your positive energy attracts positive opportunities, people like your vibe, you're more successful because you're on the lookout for good things. It's really simple. There's nothing woo-woo about it. It's just how the brain works. So one thing I noticed about these David Baer lives that was kind of amusing to me, at the beginning of the lives, he's doing this kind of Tony Robbins style, pump up the audience, like amp up the vibe. And so he's like punching his fist in the air, trying to get the audience vibing and amped up. But it somehow comes across as a little demony, sort of like he's doing it, but there's something about his expression or his movements that's kind of like, wow, this feels kind of silly. I'm going to do it because this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to amp up the audience. It may be something to do with his feminine FE fourth. FE still feels a little awkward for him because after he's doing that vibe thing and he settles back into his motivational speech, then he becomes more natural. Like that is the space where he feels more comfortable when he's delivering the TI. And there's some vibing in that, but like the really Tony Robbins style kind of vibing just looks funny on him. And it's almost as if David Bear has his own performance coach that's telling him, you got to do the Tony Robbins thing. You got to get the audience amped up. And he's like, okay, I'll do it, because that's what motivational speakers are supposed to do. But to me, it just looks a little peacockish when he does it. So I thought that was just kind of amusing, coming from an objective personality understanding of David Bear. So Tony Robbins and David Bear both have feeling at the bottom, but for Tony Robbins, it's feminine FI, and for David Bear, it's feminine FE, fourth. And it could be that Tony Robbins is double masculine, so he just has this really like super embodied presence. David Bear has SE, so he's fairly embodied, but Tony Robbins is just this kind of just punchy, very clear execution of the fist pumping in the air and, you know, all the animated, embodied Tony Robbins stuff that he does. And it could be that Tony Robbins just has more experience. He's been doing this for many years, and so it looks very natural. He's used to doing it. Or it could be just simply the masculine TE of, I'm doing this because this is what works. You know, this gets the audience excited, and he knows that from a TE perspective, and that's why he does it. Anyway, that's just something I found personally entertaining, watching David Bear try to amp up the audience. There's another thing he mentioned in one of the lives that I thought was very interesting, and I'd actually never heard it put this way before. So he was talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I think that in this audience, we're all familiar with the hierarchy of needs. But basically, you have physiological needs on the bottom: air, food, water, basic shelter. Then next you have safety needs, regular employment, health, property. Maybe you own a home, so you're a little bit more stable. Then next is love, belonging, relationships, friendships. Then self-esteem, status, recognition. And then all the way at the top is self-actualization. And that is the desire to become the best you can be, to realize your full potential. And what a lot of people suggest, and the way this was taught to me, I remember it in like a psychology 101 class, you know, back in like 1996, was that you advance through these steps one by one. So most of us watching this channel have food and air and water, but you have to have that first before you can work on the next level, and then the next level, and then the next level. And it's sometimes suggested that you really have to go up through these things chronologically, or you can't actually be self-actualized until you've progressed through all these levels. And it is pretty obvious that you can't reach your full potential if you can't breathe. That makes sense. But here's what David Bear said that I'd never heard before. He suggested that we turn that pyramid upside down and focus on the self-actualization first. And it just struck me as such a DI thing to say. Only a DI mind would think of it that way. Because if you focus on the self-growth and actualization piece, the mindset piece, that will also help you level up in the other things. I mean, obviously you need food and water. If you're focused on this growth mindset thing, you're also going to be more likely to take care of your body and your health. You're also going to be more likely to have good relationships. You're going to be more likely to have self-respect and to achieve more and make a bigger influence in the world. You'll be more likely to find consistent employment, have better relationships, have better self-esteem, more likely to take better care of your body. And I'd never actually heard someone say that in that way, also relating it back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So I thought that was kind of clever. And maybe someone else said it, but this is just the first time that I had heard it. And it really does make sense. And it's also how I operate as a DI. So I don't always know where my next paycheck's going to come from, but there's always some part of me that is working on that actualization mindset growth piece. And I've always been that way. And I think sometimes for people looking at me from the outside, I can seem very impractical because the rent's due tomorrow. I don't know how I'm going to pay it. They're thinking you need to sign up for Uber and Grubhub and pull an all-nighter. You need to get a real job. What are you doing? You're reading a self-help book right now when your rent's due tomorrow? That makes absolutely no sense. I do have boots on the ground and I'm doing practical things to, secure food and rent and all that. But there is a part of me that's a little bit more focused on this self-growth piece, when some people would say that I should just be doing more work, doing more TE, doing more hustle. But I think there's a compromise. There's somewhere in the middle, because I don't want to totally ignore the mindset piece and the growth and working on self and end up still struggling to pay rent and working at Taco Bell when I'm 80 years old. I don't want to get stuck in that. I don't want to sign up for Uber and be an Uber driver for the rest of my life. So I think there's some kind of compromise. It's like, yeah, you got to roll up your sleeves and do some work and secure your food, secure your paycheck, but making time and space in your life for this growth mindset thing also helps you level up in all those other areas. So that isn't really a new idea. I think most of us understand that we have to strike a healthy balance between working really hard, taking care of basic needs, taking responsibility for our own basic needs, but then it's also good to prioritize this idea of self-actualization. Like, where am I aiming? What is my full potential? How can I level up my mindset so that I can achieve big things and not just get caught in this Grubhub, Uber driver, Taco Bell loop? So not really new information. I just thought that it was a uniquely DI thing to say.